So, in honor of Father's Day today, we have decided to hear our father's story. So, on behalf of our church, the three persons will come forward and to share their father's story. So, Beth Hathaway and Lee Knowles and Kelly Powell, in order, they will come forward and to share their father's life story and their legacy, and also their story with us. So would you welcome Beth Hathaway first? Would you welcome her to come forward?
Thank you, everyone. Before I go into talking about my dad, as I was looking for pictures this morning, I ran across this little prayer book that was actually presented to my mom and dad by their pastor at the time and good friend Evan Johnson, who has since passed away. He gave them this book in 1969, and it was actually copyrighted in 1949. And it has 30 days of prayer. And so for the fun of it, I turned to the 16th day. And it's amazing how back in 1949, the same story correlates to today. So if I may share this little prayer with you. Give me, O God, this day a strong and vivid sense that thou art by my side. In multitude and solitude, in business and leisure, in my downsitting and in my uprising, may I ever be aware of thine accompanying presence. By thy grace, O God, I will go nowhere this day where thou canst not come, nor court any companionship that you would rob me of thine. By thy grace I will let no thought enter my heart that might hinder my communion with thee. Nor let any word come from my mouth that is not meant for thine ear. So shall my courage be firm and my heart be at peace. I steady your step when I recall that though I slip, thou dost not fall. O thou desire of all nations, in the knowledge of whose love and power there is salvation for all the peoples of the earth, hasten the day, I beseech thee, when all men shall acknowledge thee as Lord over all. Hasten the day when our earthly society shall become the kingdom of Christ. Hasten the day when thy presence and thy strong hand of thy purpose shall be found not only in the hearts of a few wise and brave men, but throughout the broad land, in court and council chamber, in workshop and marketplace, in the city and in the fields. And whatever I myself can do, give me grace this day to begin, through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for letting me share that. And now, my dad, I don't think I need these. Yeah, I do. Robert Wayne Legg, born June 9th, 1930, sitting in the second row right here. You with me, Dad? Eyes, ears. The thought that first came to my mind of how and what to write about my dad was to write down the word father and see what I could come up with. Here we go. F, faithful. My dad has always been faithful, be it staying at the same job for 39 years, being married to my mom for just shy of 60 years, remaining a member of the same church also just shy of 60 years, thus also being faithful to God, for being very involved in his children's lives for almost 59 years, for remaining on various boards and committees at church or the town library or the historical society, for keeping up with his relatives and friends of long ago, including his army buddy from Korea, Hank, mowing his 4 acres of lawn on a regular basis. If I may interject at this point, I remember when I was young and would go to bed while it was still daylight, I could hear my dad's lawnmower through the open window and smell the fresh cut grass. A fond memory for me of love and comfort. and I still love the smell of fresh cut grass. I can go on and on for days just over that one word, faithful. We move on to A, accepting. I am not perfect, neither was or is my brother, but we could always bet on learning a lesson from our wrongdoings and know, without a doubt, that our Father still loved us and was still accepting of us. T, time. Dad always had time for us. Time to play, time to help clean out the rabbit cages or build more, time to work on my brother's cars, time to test and retest the water in the pool so it would be safe to swim in, time to take us to Pomeroy's Donut Shop on Saturday mornings for plain donut hauls. No, none of this Krispy Kreme business in Massachusetts. Time to shovel out my car out of the snowdrifts at 5 o'clock in the morning so I could make it to the donut shop to make the donuts. Time to make our campsite the coziest one around with all the felts he got from his work. We had felt walls, felts on the floor, felts on our cots. Time to stop at Estes for ice cream. And more recently, time, 24/7 time to care for my mom as her mental health declined. H, hardworking and hero. Hardworking goes hand in hand with faithful. Everything I mentioned under faithful goes for hardworking as well. Dad was always working on something, tinkering with his trains. Did I mention mowing the lawn? Painting, digging in the huge hole in the yard where he found several artifacts dating back hundreds of years. And he served in the Korean War as a reporter from 1950 to 1952. Anyone who served our country is a hero in my book, no matter what they did. E, eager. Dad was and still is very eager to share his stories and knowledge with others. He's always eager to learn. He's always reading. He's eager to befriend all people, not just certain ones. Dad has always been eager for fun, eager to donate money to just causes, eager to play the stock market to make the money to donate to just causes. And most especially, he has always and remains eager to spend time with Taylor, always. R, a letter I have trouble with sometimes. R, respectful. My dad wore a suit to church every Sunday. In those days, not that it was that long ago, but people dressed up for church. Dad always wore a suit to work. To me, that was a sign of respect. Dad respected God first and foremost, and he respected the folks he worked with and socialized with, not only when they were wearing a suit, though. I was taught from a young age, as all of you were, to say please and thank you and to hold doors open for people. In my little town of West Bridgewater, Massachusetts, there would frequently be parades, and when the men and women in uniform walked by, we would wave and cheer and clap. That was certainly a sign of respect. It was just what you did. In closing, I know my father was the best father he could be. He taught me right from wrong. He taught me to love God. He taught me to save my money. He taught me how to make decisions, be they right or wrong, and how to live with those decisions. He was one of 5 children. He has 2 younger brothers, 1 older sister, and 1 younger sister. He just turned 89 years old last Sunday, and he is the last surviving one of the bunch. He must have a good ticker, because we're always surprising him with something, and Taylor and Malcolm gave him quite a shock last Sunday by getting engaged. So keep on ticking, Dad. We've got a wedding to plan. I love you.
This time, would you welcome Lee Knowles for his story?
Well, good morning and happy Father's Day to all the fathers here, and especially to the ones that are not able to be here. And since there's probably people out here that do not know who I am, my name is Lee Knowles. I attended this church and grew up here years ago until Charlotte and I got married and moved away. And today, fortunately, we're able to, at least part-time, be able to come back to Virginia and once again be part of the Red Valley Church family. We'll have picture one. Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. They all know Mom and Dad anyway. But anyway, my parents were Fred and Ailey Knowles. They were longtime members of this church in the community. And one thing I can tell you for sure, they love this church and they love the people of this church. This being Father's Day, it's my privilege to be able to talk a few minutes and share a few memories and a few facts about my father, Fred F. Knowles. Dad was born March the 2nd, 1919. Oh, excuse me. Dad was born March 2nd, 1919. He passed away January 16th, 2013 at 93. He was almost 94. He and my mother had 3 children, 6 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. And Dad himself was the youngest of 12. And I recall when we were small children ourselves, Dad always went by the name Fred F. Knowles, never using his middle name. That wasn't acceptable to us kids because we couldn't understand how anybody could not have a middle name. So finally one day, Dad answered us and he says, when you're the youngest of 12, they run out of names and they just give you initials. That kind of ended that conversation once and for all. And I share that with you today because for those that knew my father, he was a man of few words, but he seldom failed to get his point across. For those familiar with Franklin County and the Ferrum area in Franklin County, Dad grew up on the Callaway side of Ferrum Mountain, along Pig River on what's called the old Ferrum Mountain Road. And he learned at an early age that life could be challenging, as he and his 11 siblings had to hike all the way across Ferrum Mountain every day to a little school located in Ferrum on what's now Ferrum College property. And when Jay asked me, I guess he asked, I think he told me that I was doing this. But anyway, when Jay asked if I would say something today, I was kind of excited to do it because 1919 would have been Dad's centennial year. He would have turned 100 years old in March of 2019. So when I sat down thinking about what to share, I first looked back at what was it like to live in America in 1919 when he was born. And one interesting fact that jumped out at me was the fact that less than 50% of the houses in America actually had electricity in 1919. I can't even imagine. And of course, one of those houses was not Dad's. And I think this helped to explain why Dad could sit in the room, in a poorly lit room, so dim that when you walked in, you had to strain to see across the room. And we would come in and we'd flick the light on and say, Dad, don't you need more light? And he would always look up at us and say, well, and of course, his generation, for all sentences begin with, well. Well, I think I'm fine. And then he would proceed to give us one of his words of wisdom phrases. That one would always bring out, if you waste not, you want not. Dad seemed to always have an endless supply of these little phrases. One that I recall quite frequently with 2 siblings myself was, it's hard to listen when you're talking. And believe me, he had an opportunity to use that quite frequently around the house. But there was one that I think Dad had a special interest in. And it goes like this. You never, ever, never purchase another new car without discussing it with your wife, unless you plan to be eating a lot of cold dinners for a long time. And for those that knew my mother, Bailey's, I don't believe he made that mistake but one time. But on a more serious note, Dad was a hard-working, honest gentleman that enjoyed working with his hands. And I don't know if any of y'all know it or not, but he was the Maytag repairman for Lowe's stores for a number of years. And whether he was working on his farm or in his garden or just repairing somebody's appliances, he was always happy working with his hands. And I'm sure there's probably people here today that can remember calling him when the refrigerator or some other appliance went on the blink to have him come work on it. Dad was a quiet, gentle role model for all of us kids, and especially our friends, as he mentored first-time beekeepers, discussed the finer details of farming and gardening with his friends, or just being a father figure to so many, especially Charlotte, who lost her father so many years ago at such a young age. Our father was truly a blessed man, as he was blessed with good health, good friends, and a strong work ethic that he shared with everybody he made contact with. And in closing, I'll share one last fact about Fred Knowles. Fred had 3 true loves in his life. He loved his Lord, he loved his wife, and he loved his family. And I'm sure that there's those out here today that remember calling him a friend, a neighbor, or maybe even a mentor. But for his kids, most of all, we just were blessed to call him Dad. Thanks a lot.
Welcome, Calvin.
So Dad said I couldn't embarrass him. So now's my opportunity. So when Pastor Jay asked me to say a little something about my dad for Father's Day, I was very reluctant because I'm not much of a public speaker. But I couldn't pass up the opportunity to tell my father just how much I appreciate him. So first, I just want to tell you a little bit about him, like most of you don't know. But my dad, Woodford Moran Flowers Jr., was born March the 3rd, 1942, and he was raised in Roanoke in the Garden City area. He met the love of his life, my mother, when he was 14 or 15, and at 17, weighing less than 120 pounds, which he's not far off for now, but weighing less than 120 pounds, he joined the Army to serve his country. He grew up in a time and a place that didn't have great emphasis on education, but despite that, he became an electrician, and he worked his way up to become president of one of the largest electrical contractors in Virginia. Early in his life, there were times when he didn't have a lot of money, and he didn't always have a way to work, but he always went to work, even on those occasions when he had to hitchhike to get there. I remember Mom telling me about him hitchhiking all the way to Martinsville sometimes just so he could get to work. Growing up, I was the son he never had. He taught me how to cut wood and split wood, and every summer we would burn copper wire just so that we could afford to go on vacation. I was his sidekick whenever there was any manual labor to be done, because that wasn't really Melanie's thing. And still really isn't. He's always been there for his wife, for his kids, for his grandkids, and for many others. He's generous with his time and with his money. Thank goodness. I often tease him about being grumpy, and he is often grumpy. But the truth is, you can always count on him to tell you the truth and to be honest with you, even when you don't want to hear it, which is sometimes helpful. What I appreciate most about my father is the example that he set with his relationship with my mother. He was always there for her. He spent his life doing everything possible to make sure that she was happy. And she was. My father is the strongest and the sweetest person that I know. Thanks, Dad, for being you and for being the biggest influence and the biggest supporter in my life. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Lee, and thank you, Kelly, for sharing your Father's Day. It was wonderful. Please all rise and sing praise.